Hello, you've reached Gloria with Farmstead Talk, and welcome to Homesteading International. I am here today with Shahnaz of Casa Beatrix, and she is representing her country of Portugal in this homesteading interview today. Welcome, Shahnaz, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Would you like to share with the audience where they can find you on social media?
Sure. The handle that we use is the Cremooz, so TheCramooz, and that actually is, I know it's not the name of our project, but it's the nickname that my husband and I share. A bit like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were Brangelina, we are the Cremooz. It's a combination of our nicknames, slightly easier to remember than my name.
Okay. All righty. So would you like to share a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you're currently living?
Yeah, I would love to. So I was born and raised in Switzerland to parents that were from mixed backgrounds. So my father was Iranian, my mother Bolivian, and I studied there. Then I studied in the US. I lived in Bolivia for a little while. And then I lived in New York, which is where I actually met my husband. He's half Belgian, half Dutch, so we're a very conventional family. And we now live in rural Portugal.
Okay. Share with me, if you will, about the experience that you had traveling the world and studying and visiting and touring other farms.
Yes, that was an incredible time. So when we left New York, we knew that we wanted, well, the plan was to move to a farm, but we thought it was a little bit maybe too romanticized to be sitting in New York offices and say that we wanted to live on a farm. So we were planning a 1 year sort of extended and belated honeymoon, and we decided to go around the world and to use the time to volunteer on farms to test our theory of wanting to live on one, and also to learn, because well, my husband had some experience growing vegetables, but I was basically just a very enthusiastic newbie. And so we traveled around. We started in Europe, went to East Africa, South Africa, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, Latin America, and then back to Europe. And it was, as you could probably imagine, an experience of a lifetime. We met some incredible people. We used the platform workaway.info to find most of our volunteer opportunities, and we got incredibly lucky with the hosts that we stayed with. Quite a few of them we actually became friends with, even though we only stayed for about 10 days in any given place. And you know, some of the highlights. We stayed in a permaculture project in South Africa. It was called Happy Toes. The owner there had actually lived in a tent for, I think, a couple of years on the project before he started anything, because he wanted to understand the layout of the land. And so the way he had designed it is that he had sort of ditches that went throughout the project. And so if he wanted to water the property passively, he could just kind of open the water on one end, and then it would just kind of flow throughout and water all the beds and just keep everything irrigated. It was really incredible. We also stayed on a chicken farm, Kenilworth Farms, on the Sunshine Coast in Australia, where they had about 500 free-range chickens, and that was absolutely phenomenal. I don't think I've ever eaten as many delicious eggs as during that week. We stayed on an avocado farm. We also stayed with my uncle in Bolivia, and he manages a hydroponic lettuce farm and was, at the time, figuring out how to produce oyster mushrooms commercially. So we got to help him do some of the trials. So yeah, I could go on all day, but it was really just an incredible experience, and confirmed that we wanted to live on a farm and that it was feasible. It was not just a crazy dream.
Wow, what an experience. It sounds so fabulous. How did you pick the area that you finally ended up in, and what is your vision for that property?
So we are in rural Portugal. We're about 2 hours away from Porto, right next to a mountain range called Serra da Estrela, which is known for its beautiful night skies. We ended up here partly by mistake because we were volunteering nearby, and so while we were visiting a lot of properties, we ended up finding this particular property through word of mouth. We had a problem with our car, and went to a mechanic one village over, and he happened to have his bees on this property that was for sale. That was beautiful. We had, if I take a step back, we had narrowed down our choice of where to live to Spain and Portugal before the trip. And so at the very beginning of our trip, we traveled around the two countries and just really fell in love with central Portugal. There are a lot of abandoned properties. Most of the youth today are really looking to go get a job in the city. They're not interested in taking up the homestead or the farm. And so it's really, there are still a lot of small villages and beautiful communities, but yeah, a lot of areas are just kind of abandoned. So it's really, for us, it was a beautiful place and a lot of opportunity here.
Okay. So what is your vision for the property?
The idea is to set up ecotourism farm stay project and to have people come here for holidays, but also for workshops and small events that we would be running. And the property comes with 3 old stone houses that we're in the process of renovating. So we will live in one. The other big one will be for a big space for sort of events and a big kitchen. And then the third one will be one of the rental units that we have. And we want each of the rental units to have its own bathroom and kitchen so that people can be sort of as independent as they want to be. And they will hopefully also all be weatherproof. There are a lot of projects around here that use safari tents that are beautiful, but we want to make sure that we can give our visitors the best possible experience year-round.
Okay. And when is that going to be up and running, would you say?
Hopefully as of next summer.
Very nice.
So summer 2021.
Very nice. And what will you be offering there?
So the idea is to definitely have breakfast included and then have a variety of different workshops. It can be almost anything. We ourselves will probably run some workshops that are more around vegetable garden or maybe learning or teaching people how to milk goats and make cheese. But the idea is to work with other experts and offer everything from watercolor to maybe negotiation or yoga or writing workshops. I mean, you name it, and we would love to host it here. So we're really hoping to have that as an extra reason to get people here. And then hopefully once they're here, they'll realize that living off-grid and being closer to nature is even more incredible than they thought it could be.
Nice. So you mentioned goat cheese. So let's talk about your goats and the animals that you have out there at the farm.
Yeah, so we have, we have goats. We have 5 goats now. We were up to 16 a couple of weeks ago and then decided to downsize a bit to make it more manageable. We also have a Mirandese donkey, which is a type of donkey that's typical from the north of Portugal, and it basically just means that she's incredibly fluffy. We also have 2 cats, 2 dogs, 2 little pot-bellied pigs, chickens, ducks, and guinea fowl. So it's quite a menagerie. It's never a dull moment, and I'm actually surprised that nobody's parked outside my door making noise, because that's usually, they always do it when I'm on a call.
Yeah. So what are the purposes for them? I know you said you were going to make goat cheese with the goats, and just interaction when you finally have your event center and your business going. It'll be lovely just to be in the presence of those animals. But do you use any of those for food products or anything else?
I mean, it's part of the vision. So right now, all of our animals free range. So in the morning we let them out, and they're up, out and about all day, and then we just put them back into their different homes in the evening. And so they each help us maintain and improve the space. When we arrived, the property had been abandoned for about 15 years, so everything was quite wild. The goats came first because they were helping us clear the place, and they eat brambles, which is kind of magical when you have that many. And so they really, basically, we're trying to use a permaculture approach, and that just means thinking about the space as an ecosystem. And so the goats and the donkey all eat grass, but different types of greens. The chickens provide eggs, as do the ducks. Over time, we would love it if we could at least partly provide for ourselves in terms of meat as well, but that is not yet happening. And then the pigs help us also in terms of food waste, but they also they prepare the where they are, they're basically preparing it so that we can later plant something there. So we are trying to make them be a part of what we're doing. Depending on the day, if you ask my husband, he'll say that they're all pets. But really the idea is to sort of leverage them for what they naturally bring to any project.
Absolutely. They're multi-use, aren't they?
They are. They are. The birds are great insect control. I will say that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about growing food and gardening. I'm not sure if your country has like a growing zone, does it? And I don't even know if I don't think it's compatible to like a U.S. growing zone. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I had looked into it a little while ago, and I think we're in growing zone 9A or B, but I don't. It's not something that I've seen talked about that much here.
Yeah,
So
I don't think it's compatible because that would be like deep south,
yeah,
subtropical. Yeah,
no, that's not.
probably not the
Um,
same.
not quite there. No, so where we are, we're actually at about 900 meters of altitude, which is about 2,700 feet. And so we do have seasons. We have winter, we have summer, but our winter is relatively mild. So being in Europe, I talk in centigrade, not in Fahrenheit. In winter, our nights probably get to -5. So it's not too bad. We occasionally get snow, but usually it's more often than not just a layer of frost in the morning. And then in summer, it can go as high as 40 degrees, which is very hot, but that's usually just a couple of days in August. So all in all, we do have a relatively long growing season. We do have a vegetable garden, and we're trying to grow all sorts of things. I mentioned to you, my starting point was that I used to kill cactuses, so it's a very slow journey, but but I love it, and I love discovering how things grow. Last year I grew chickpeas, and I was really excited about it, and I had about 6 plants, and then I ended up with maybe like 25 chickpeas, and I was like, this is, it just brings a whole new level of appreciation when I can buy a jar of chickpeas at the supermarket now. So it's right now I would say that our vegetable garden is a lot of experimenting and a lot of just learning how to grow things and harvest them, with the idea of making, scaling up a little bit over time. I mean, we want to be as self-sustainable as possible. So we grow all sorts of things. I usually I try to do companion planting. And then we do everything from sort of onions, beets, cabbage, peppers, zucchini, eggplants. I'm trying artichokes, but that's slow. I also have a couple of beds of asparagus, which hopefully we can start harvesting next year. So we really do try to grow a little bit of everything. We have saffron as well, which is a throwback to my Iranian roots and the fact that we love food. So the idea over time is to make this place into an edible landscape, so that across the seasons, between fruit trees and the vegetable garden and everything that's around, you can just kind of walk around and pick and choose things and just be reminded just how diverse nature can be and how much it can provide.
It sounds like a paradise to me. It's really beautiful, it really is. What kind of sustainable practices are you utilizing on the homestead there?
So here we're actually completely off-grid. So our water comes from a couple of natural springs that we've built a couple of reservoirs and connected to the tiny house and other buildings. Our electricity so far is all solar. We're hoping to add a wind turbine at some point. We compost everything. So right now we compost both food scraps on one side, and on the other side we also use a compost toilet. Then I'm trying to think. We use wood for heating, and we also have a solar shower. So for now we're not using that one so much, but for summer, sorry. So from May to, let's say, mid-October, we have an outdoor shower that has a big sort of black pipe spiral, and so the sun heats up the water. And then there's also a cold water track, because otherwise we'd burn. We collect rainwater. We're trying to really get back to the basics and to be as efficient and as resource friendly as possible.
Oh, what is your favorite thing about homesteading, would you say? And what would you share your favorite things with folks that are non-homesteaders that you would like to share with them?
So one question that we get a lot, because we used to live in New York, is, aren't you bored out there? You're in the middle of nowhere on a farm. And not at all. I mean, it's fascinating. The amount of things that we are discovering and learning constantly is, and there's an endless to-do list. So I love it. I mean, everything, you know, seeing how things grow, learning how to make cheese. At some point, I would love to learn how to sew. I want to start making more preserves. I mean, it's really, and everything you do feels useful. You know, it's really, it's not taking things for granted. It's going back to the basics. And so that's part of what I love about homesteading. What I would like other people, or to share with other people, is the fact that this lifestyle that we choose does not mean that we're giving up modern amenities either, right? So there's a bit of a false dichotomy, I feel, that exists, where either you're kind of a dirty hippie who lives off grid, or you're somebody classy and elegant who lives in a city. And that is completely untrue. You can be, I mean, we have perfect Wi-Fi here. I'm sitting in a tiny house and talking to you. And so I'm hoping that when people come to visit, whether they come, you know, for a vacation or for a course or for whatever reason, that they will walk away realizing that it is a good thing to live closer to nature and to be a little bit more in sync and in rhythm with the seasons. That would be, yeah, my hope.
Very well said, because I think once people learn that we can get more resources from our land and be able to utilize things from our land, we do fall into sync and with our seasons, and we eat seasonally and we live seasonably. And there's so much to learn to bring to people that have forgotten these lost skills. So I think what you're doing, your purpose, is wonderful, and I'm going to come visit you someday.
I would love that. That would be fantastic.
Let's switch it up a little bit. I want to ask a question that I quite often ask a lot of homesteaders. Does spirituality or religion play a part in your homesteading lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would think it's almost impossible to live this close to nature and not be spiritual. I think it naturally brings you closer to what's really important. It puts things in perspective always. So neither my husband nor I are very religious, but I would say that we are spiritual. Yes.
So where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
So many things to do. When you ask that question, I just have sort of to-do lists, you know, like flying through my mind. In 5 years, hopefully we'll be on our 3rd or 4th year open. We will, so we'll have all of our infrastructure in place. We will have probably a series of workshops. We will have a great vegetable garden by then. So we'll be that much closer to self-sufficiency. And I hope that once we're a little more established, I look forward to reaching out to other similar projects and seeing how we can reinforce each other's work. To me, that's, you know, in Portugal, there are a lot of, you know, if I put myself in the shoes of somebody who's visiting Portugal, of course, if we have visitors one year, I would love that they, you know, fall in love with the place and say, we're going to come back every summer. But it might be more realistic to say, well, you know, if you want to come back to Portugal next summer, you know, you're welcome to come back here, but there are a couple other great projects, if you like ours, that you could like to visit. Or maybe if people have a 10-day itinerary, we can help them so that they can see us here and then other similar projects either farther north or farther south. I know that in terms of marketing and business, there's competition. To me, there is so much abundance for everybody. There's so much work to be done. And, you know, we're not aiming to have a huge farm stay either. We're hoping to have, you know, enough space to sleep maybe 15 people. So I think that there is really a lot that can be gained to connecting to others. And I would even love to go beyond Portugal, but that's a whole other level.
You were just reading my mind. My next question to you was, do you ever foresee you expanding your project to another location? Keeping the one in Portugal, but moving your vision to another area and another location.
Not at this point in time, but you know, when I talk about having sort of a network of similar projects, like I could definitely see if we think about wanting to travel with animals and with all the responsibilities, it can be quite difficult, even if we're traveling off season, right, in winter. If there are other projects that are sort of like-minded, I could totally see doing, a home exchange. And so then it's not necessarily us expanding to other locations, but it's building a network of like-minded projects and seeing how we can all work together and benefit from that connection. And that to me is that's kind of the long-term vision. I would love for that to happen.
Very nice. Love it. Love what you're doing.
Thank you.
We're getting ready to close up here. So if you can sum up in one word what your homesteading experience has meant to you thus far, what would that word be?
That sounds like a simple question, but I think it's the hardest one you've asked me. I think if I had to pick one word at this point in time, it would be growth. Because every single day we're growing in terms of what we're learning, what we're doing, but our project is also growing. Our vegetable garden is growing. We're literally growing things. So if I had to pick one word today, it would be that. Maybe if you ask me again in a year, it'll be something else like balance or, but for now, I think it's growth.
And we're in the now right now, and we're living in this moment. And I think growth is a really good word. So Shahnaz, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a pleasure. And I look forward to meeting you someday.
Same.
Bye-bye.